What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lewis. As you can see in another video, we are not in the bowling center. I came to film at the bowling center and there was a sweeper taking up all 64 lanes. And so because of that, I'm going to be filming in my Jeep. Shout out to my Gladiator Rubicon that takes me to and from everywhere I need to go. Highly recommend this car. All right, but this video is not about that. Before we get into any more details, I didn't tell you what this video is about. This video is going to be kind of like a part 2 to my why I want to quit bowling video. That was, honestly very well received. To be honest, I have not looked through any of those comments. The last time I checked, it had like 500 comments, and actually, I'll just check right now. I've got my phone here. We'll check how many comments that video has, because I know that it had a lot. Yeah, so the video has 26,000 views and 626 comments on them. And to be honest, I have not looked through any of those comments at all. You know, a lot, because I can imagine that a lot of those comments are talking about, other people's perception of what the bowling community is like versus what my experience is. I can only share what my experience is in bowling. I don't like to speak for anyone else. That's the thing. So before we get into any more details, please consider subscribing to the channel. This is something that I'm trying to do a little bit more often, just kind of talking about the state of bowling, stuff other than actually me throwing the bowling ball. And so I do want to show you guys here my new chamois. It's the same 500 grit chamois is back in stock on DH Labs website. The link is going to be down below in the description. This is designed to be, kind of a funny thing, but this is a very thick chamois, as you guys can see here. Very, very premium feel. They're $22 online, which is very, very cheap. The last time they were back in stock, they sold out very fast. So if you want one, please use the link down below in the description. I'd super appreciate it. If you like this jersey, right, efx.co, promo code Napoles10. They get you 10% off your entire order. And then just a quick shout out to Napoles Media, which is the media company that I've started. If you have any interest in any professional videos or photography done, please do not hesitate to reach out. Even if you are in a different state than I am, even if you're in a different city, whatever the situation is, if it makes sense, we will make it happen. Please reach out to me. That's Lewis at napolesmedia.com if you have any questions whatsoever. So this video is going to be a lot like the last one, where it's going to be mostly off script, just me talking about some different topics that, some people reached out, they texted me, they sent me messages on Facebook and Instagram talking about some of the situations that they have run into with bowling. And a lot of people tell me, hey, the community is not very toxic. It's not very, it's very, inviting. And that a lot of people talk about that the issues that I'm facing with is the internet and not the actual bowling community. And while I don't disagree with those kind of comments, what I will say is that the comments on the internet are from bowlers. And it's a lot of the same things that we hear, whispers of. And, yes, they are internet trolls, internet, keyboard warriors that would never, ever, ever say that kind of stuff to your face. And for those of you, I've had a few people say, oh, I absolutely would say it to your face. No, you won't. All right? No one has ever come up to me and said the stuff that people type. No one has ever said that to my face, because it's just the nature of the world that we live in, right? So one of the topics that I wanted to discuss in this video was the handicap. All right, we all know there's sandbagging in bowling. There's no way around that. There is sandbagging in bowling. But the reality is that we have built an economy, we have built a culture of it being okay, right? Like, I wholeheartedly disagree with sandbagging. Every single frame, no matter if I'm up 100 and the game's already locked, I'm still going to try to throw a strike every single time, because that's just who I am, right? I don't care about what my average is. I want it to be as high as possible for me, not for anyone else. But everyone knows, everyone can name someone in the comments that they know in their local bowling center that is a sandbagger, someone who intentionally averages 180, to 200 when normally they are 220 to 225. I can name 5 people in the city that I live in. I'm not going to, obviously, because that's not what this video is about, who should be averaging 220 to 230, but intentionally keep their average around 200 to 210, because when they go bowl handicap tournaments on the weekends, they're getting an additional 20 or 30 pins of handicap. And when everyone is getting their true average, and then someone's getting an extra 20 or 30 pins, that's going to be a huge advantage. For me, how I circumvent that is very, very simple. I just don't bowl handicap tournaments. Everything that I bowl is scratch. And if I do decide to bowl a handicap tournament, I can't complain when someone is playing by the rules, right? I can't complain that someone has an established average and wants to make money on the weekends, right? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't want everyone to be scratch and then bowl a handicap tournament. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's, one of my biggest gripes with bowling in general is that, and look, I get it. There's not a lot of scratch stuff to bowl because a lot of people don't show up to the scratch tournaments. A lot of the tournaments that are available to bowl, unfortunately or fortunately, are handicap events. But you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Like, you can't complain about the handicap and then go bowl the handicap tournaments. I used to bowl tournaments all the time. I don't anymore because I've realized that if I'm going to make money bowling handicap tournaments, my average needs to be lower and I need to perform higher. And I'm just not willing to do that. I would rather just not bowl tournaments and bowl 1 or 2 scratch tournaments a year than, be upset about the handicap. Now, on another vein, we've lost a lot of bowlers to the toxicity of the bowling community. I'm not going to mention any names, but I do know someone for a fact that started bowling, and, they were obviously like any new bowler. They were averaging, 100, 110. But, very quickly got better. And so this person was averaging like maybe 120 at the time. Okay. And they shot their first 200 game. And I thought that was a big deal. I was, celebrating. That's who I am. Hey, congratulations on shooting your first 200 game. Well, there was people that called this person a sandbagger and, oh, you're cheating, you're a sandbagger, when they weren't doing that at all. And now this person that I'm referencing isn't even in the bowling community anymore, does not bowl at all anymore because of the experiences that they had their first year of bowling. This person, I think, could have easily been a 200 average by now. This was a few years ago. 200, 215, I think that they could have got to. But because of the toxicity of the bowling community, they're not bowling anymore. And it's funny because at the time it was 80 pins over average, right? So they were averaging 120. They shot 200. If I shoot 300, no one calls me a sandbagger. What's the difference? I think that the difference is that because they're a lower average bowler, automatically they have to be sandbagging. Not everyone's a piece of shit, right? Like, some people are just low average bowlers who get lucky one time. Right? We don't need to be attacking the bowling community because you assume that someone is a sandbagger. And I think that's going to be the end of the handicap topic. Just because, look, if you don't like the where we're at with the handicap, then just don't bowl handicap events. Right? Or bowl handicap events where the average is lower than what yours is, right? Because if you bowl a handicap tournament that's 90% of 210, for example, but you're a 220 average bowler, like, you're getting an extra 10 pins on the field. So, that's something to keep in mind as well. Another issue that I think bowling has is the boringness of bowling. And for the record, I don't think bowling is boring. I think that bowling is fun. I love bowling. It's one of my... I've been doing it for like 15 years now. I have this entire channel dedicated to bowling. So, that's something that, keep in mind as I go through this. But the reality is that you either throw a strike or you don't. right? There's really nothing else. You either throw a strike or you throw a spare. When you watch bowling on TV, no matter how much they talk about the pattern, it's invisible, right? It's the invisible course. When you go bowl league, the U.S. Open pattern and a house shot to the eyes looks the same because you can't see anything. And I think because of that, it can come across as very boring. Oh, that person sucks because they shot, 130 on TV. When the reality is that most bowlers out there would not even come anywhere near that. But the perception is that, oh, when I go bowl league, I can average 220. And yeah, like it's just a reality. Bowling is very boring. You strike or you don't, and everything else is kind of this gray area. I'm a big basketball fan. I've been playing basketball my entire life. Well, minus a decade there. And basketball is a big reason why I've lost a lot of weight. Yes, you either make the shot or you miss the shot, but everything that happens in between, right? Like there's players setting screens, you're making moves with the ball, you're running without the ball in your hand. There's so many things that can happen before the ball goes in. And bowling is just not like that, right? Your pre-shot routine does nothing to influence the ball motion. There's really nothing you can do except use your brain and hope that the move that you're making is the right move. And again, because of that, it can come across as very, very boring. When you think of golf, in golf, yeah, the goal is to put the ball in the little hole, 300 yards down lane or downfield or 150, whatever the case may be. But there's a lot of things that can happen leading up to that putt where the ball goes in the little cup, right? It can get, in the water, it can go out of bounds, it can go in, in the green. I'm not a golfer. I don't really know a whole lot about golf. I just know that when I watch golf on TV, it's inherently more exciting than bowling because of the nature of there's a million things that can happen before the result. In bowling, it's just not like that. And I think that's why bowling in general doesn't have a lot of sponsors. It's not necessarily because of the toxicity in bowling. I think it's just because of the boring nature of bowling. And again, I don't think that bowling is boring. I'm just saying what the perception is from the outside looking in. When you watch bowling on TV, there's not a lot going on, and don't even get me started on the commentary on the PBA tour. I think it is awful. The commentary that we have, it is horrible. It is horrific. It is honestly a reason why even me as a bowler, I either A, don't watch the telecast, or B, I watch it with music playing over the top because I don't give a crap what these announcers, and I'm not going to say them by name. You guys know who I'm talking about already. I think that they're horrible. I think the PBA announcing is terrible. When you watch the NBA playoffs, if you're watching a game that Mike Breen is announcing, for example, it is exciting. This is someone who is not affiliated with one team or the other, right? This is someone who is very knowledgeable about the game. In bowling, like you can't have someone who is affiliated with a brand commentate and not be biased. Right? I don't care what you say. They're biased. Right? And again, that's all I'm going to talk about that. But again, yeah, those are some of the issues that I think bowling has. Is very boring to the outside looking in, right? To the uninformed. Again, we call it the invisible course because you don't know, like one shot to the next, it can be completely different. And if you're not a bowler, you don't understand why that is. And I think that the big thing that we need as a bowling community is more bowlers. If we don't have more bowlers, this game will never grow. And yeah, and so one of the things that I did was I wanted to ask ChatGPT, hey, why is bowling dying? I wanted to see what it would pop up. And I'm going to share with you what my ChatGPT said, right? I got it right here. I said, why is bowling a dying game? It says, so my ChatGPT said, bowling is often considered a dying game by some due to a mix of cultural, economic, and generational shifts. But it's more accurate to say it's evolving. But here's why some people perceive it as dying, right? The decline of traditional leagues, which is a really big thing. Leagues is nothing like it used to be. Less league play. Bowling leagues used to be a staple of the community life, especially in the 60s through the 90s. Now participation in formal leagues has dropped pretty considerably. Right, the time commitment. The younger generation often doesn't want to commit to the same weekly schedule for months. 35 weeks for a bowling league is very, very long. Just to compare, this entire bowling season, I played in 3 basketball leagues, 3 different basketball leagues that they were only running, 8 to 10 weeks long. 35 weeks of bowling league is it's just, it's too long. It's a tough commitment. Like, I don't want to do it every week. Can we do like a 10-week league, maybe take a season off, then bowl another league? I think that's a big issue with bowling, right? The aging infrastructure, the first thing this talks about is old centers, right? Many bowling alleys haven't modernized. Aging facilities without updates can feel outdated or less appealing. But also, right, that if we took the average age of league bowlers in America, I don't know what that number is. I imagine that number is pretty high. And it's a very older community when compared to other communities. But the reality is that the only way bowling grows, the only way bowling gets better, is if we get the younger generation bowling. Part of that is the older generation, and I'm talking to you, older generation. You need to stop with the whole two-handed hate thing, man. Like, Jesus F. Every time I say Jesus Christ, someone comments in the comments saying that I shouldn't be saying that. But Jesus F. Christ, man. Like, why does it matter? Why does it matter to you how someone else throws the bowling ball? I said this in the last video. Just bowl. Who freaking cares how someone else throws a bowling ball? If you think that it's, like they have an unfair advantage, then you should do it as well. I'm bowling two-handed now because I think it's going to help my one-handed game down the road. I don't think I'm going to bowl two-handed forever. I think eventually I'm going to mix and match both of them because I see benefits to both of them. And the older community just needs to get with it. We are losing bowlers because of the toxicity in bowling. I see it every single day, not just on the internet, right? In leagues and stuff where people, just another fucking two-hander. Excuse my language, but this is I'll use an explicit warning at the in my thumbnail for this video. Oh, just another fucking two-hander, just another fucking two-hander. Like, who cares? Right? When you look at junior gold, every year, the number of two-handers goes up every single year. Another thing that it comes up here, it says closures, right? Hundreds of traditional alleys have closed, especially independent-owned ones. Have lands get bought up for more profitable development. A lot of people talk about Bolero, that they're killing bowling, and I would disagree. They're killing league bowling because the reality is that if league bowling was enough to sustain a bowling alley, there would be more leagues. But the reality is that the open play, I talked about this in the last video as well, the reality is that open play generates more revenue for the bowling alley than leagues ever will, because they're paying $5-6 a game. They're renting shoes for $3-4 at a time. They're going to the concession stand. They're buying beer. They're buying pizza. They're buying wings. All of this stuff has a high profit ratio for the bowling center. And the reality is that league bowlers, the leagues that are paying $2 a game during prime time, it just doesn't generate money, right? We're not in the early 90s. Even the early 2000s where league bowling was generating a lot of money for the bowling center. We just don't live in that world anymore. And unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. Another thing here is, right, changing of entertainment preferences. There's more options. Today's consumers have way more entertainment choices, from gaming and streaming to immersive experiences like axe throwing or escape rooms. Shorter attention spans. Bowling is a slower paced game in a world that thrives on fast paced, engaging content. Right? That's another thing there. And I'm sorry I'm looking away from the camera. I'm just reading this. This is another one, right? Perception problem. It's seen as an uncool. Bowling often gets stereotypes as an older person's hobby or something you only do at birthday parties. It's hard to disagree with that. But also lack of representation. This is something that I talk about all the time. Right? Compared to sports like basketball or football, bowling has little mainstream media presence. But also, right, there's a lack of representation, right? There's a lot of people who look the same that are bowling. There's not a huge diversity in bowling, which is something that I wish that we can get into. My skin is white, right? But I come from a Hispanic culture. There's not a lot of Cubans bowling, and I'm sure maybe there'll be a few commenting in the. It'd be nice to have more people that look and speak like me in the bowling community. I mean, I'm from Miami, Florida. Obviously, in Miami, Florida, there's a bunch of people who look like me. But when you look on TV, like on the PBA, right, there's not a lot of differences in the bowlers, right? They kind of all look the same. And I just wish there was more diversity in bowling. And that's not something that, I can change or anyone here can change. But how we attract more bowlers in a more diverse world is getting with the times, right? We need to be more open to different types of bowlers, different types of people getting into the bowling world. Listen, I don't care where someone's from. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what they sound like. I just want to bowl. And this is something that I've never said on social media, obviously. And to some, this might be saying the quiet part out loud. And, this isn't like I want less white people bowling. That's not what I'm saying, right? I want more bowlers. And I wish that we can get more people in a more diverse community in bowling. Cost and accessibility, rising cost, right? Equipment is expensive. I feel very fortunate that I'm in the position that I'm in where I get a lot of bowling balls sent to me from the distributors or from the manufacturers. But the reality is that bowling's expensive, man. If you're buying just 2 balls a year, we're talking about $500 in equipment. Like that's very, very expensive, especially like bowling balls are not like golf clubs, for example. Golf clubs last forever. Like you can upgrade if you want to upgrade them. You don't have to upgrade them unless they break. Like you buy a brand new basketball, that thing will last you 3-4 years. You buy a brand new bowling ball, you throw it in the league every week. The reality is that you're going to need to upgrade that pretty soon. And so the cost is very, very expensive. Fewer centers. Right? As centers close, fewer people have access to bowling alley, especially in rural areas. Right? I've heard of bowling centers closed where it was the only bowling center in that city. I grew up in Miami, Florida. Shout out to Bird Bowl and all my friends back home. It's the only bowling center in Miami, Florida that does leagues and stuff, right? There's like boutique bowling centers and stuff. But if you're a league bowler and, God forbid, Bird Bowl closes in Miami, Florida, where are you going to go bowl? You're going to drive an hour north to the next county where the next bowling center is? I'm not doing that every week. Here in Vegas, I'm fortunate. Like, South Point's never going to close. But if South Point closes, I go to Sam's Town. Sam's Town closes, I go to, the Orleans, the Gold Coast. There's a lot of options for bowling in this huge city that I live in Las Vegas. But the reality is that that's not the case in a lot of cities. Again, here it says it's not all doom and gloom, right? Boutique bowling like Bolero is revitalizing interest. However you feel about Bolero, they are, getting more and more open play. It says here, social media and YouTube creators like me are building a new wave of awareness and excitement around the sport. Youth programs are driving. Here it says, so bowling isn't dying, it's just the same game it used to be. And I think that's a problem. Bowling, aside from the equipment, hasn't really changed much in the last X amount of years. So yeah, this is going to be the end of this video. If you're watching this all the way through, I really appreciate it. If I missed anything that you would like for me to talk about, comment down below. Eventually I'll look through these comments. If you know me personally, shoot me a text. And if you don't know me personally, maybe shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook if you want me to add to this video, or maybe just share your opinion. And then I think the last thing I want to leave this on as me as a person, if you have an issue with me as a person, shoot me a text message on my mobile phone or call me on my cell phone. And if you don't have my phone number, then you don't know me well enough to have an opinion about me. That's where I'm going to leave it with. And then the chamois, please order one. Look at this thing. It's amazing. Smells good. It's a really good chamois. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for this, letting me rant here for 25 minutes. I appreciate it. All love. We'll see you next time.